live with a special guest tonight. First of all, welcome to New Minihane Blues. Yeah, first guest. That's right.
The doctor.
Yeah.
The doctor. Doctor, what do you say?
So first of all, everyone, welcome to another edition of New Minihane Blues. And tonight we're joined by special guest Dr.Dead, who runs a Grateful Dead internet radio station. And he's got a Twitter handle, which we should have put in his bio, but we'll mention it for him as well. We're here tonight to hear what he has to say and his comments on what we're going to be focusing on tonight, which will be the string of Radio City Music Hall shows celebrating the 15th anniversary of the Grateful Dead in 1980, October of 1980, accumulating with the Halloween show, which was actually going to rebroadcast this on Halloween night on the Grateful Dead YouTube channel, which is going to be great. Yep. Nice. So I got my alarm all set for that.
Let me just throw this out there. Quote, a pirate internet-only radio station playing nothing but the Grateful Dead. Is that not the coolest fucking thing?
There we go.
Pirates, you got the Grateful Dead, you got internets, you got radio. I mean, what the fuck else could you ask for? What's up, Dr. Dead? What's going on, man? Good to meet you.
How's it going, guys? Great to be here. Glad you guys listened to the station, first of all, and invited me on. I think it's great.
The station's actually been great for me because, as I told these guys when we started this, I have sort of removed myself from listening to the Grateful Dead. I don't spend much time with them anymore, and just through forces of nature, it just happened. And now at work, I can throw on WGD Rocks, and I listen to some things that I just haven't heard, which is really a lot of fun because these really deep cut jams and these interesting sort of things that I hadn't actually heard really much of in the past. So I'm enjoying the station a lot. And yeah, if you're listening out there, on Twitter, he's at WGD Rocks. So yeah, so
GDR.rocks.
Tell me, Dr. Dead, what were you a DJ? Why did you even get into doing this? How was
I was in college way back in the day. I ran a college radio station for 2 years. And after school, I went to a recording workshop. I attended Full Sail, so I do some live engineering. Did that for several years, and then moved back to my hometown about 6 years ago. And of course, commercial radio was just awful. And I wanted something to listen to on the radio. I didn't always like to shuffle through iTunes or whatever, to find something to listen to. So I started a classic rock station in 2014. It's called the Mad Music Asylum, and that's really the flagship station. And then after a couple of years, I started a blues show on Monday nights. I do a jazz show on Wednesday nights, and then I do a Grateful Dead show every night from 1 to 3 a.m. And what I noticed in the statistics was the blues show was getting a lot of hits. The jazz show was getting a lot of hits, and the Grateful Dead show was through the roof. So I said, "Well, you know what?
Something to this.
I've got all this damn music. I'm just going to start some more radio stations." So I started a blues station, I started a jazz station, and I started a Grateful Dead station, and all three of those are outpacing the classic rock station by a mile. I mean, the Grateful Dead station. I get on the Grateful Dead station and look at the stats at any given time, and there's usually 120 listeners at once.
At any given time?
That's great. At any given time.
That's great.
10,000 unique listeners a month, which is pretty good
so
for a little radio station.
Tell us a little bit about, how did you get into the Dead? Like, we don't need to hear the whole story, but how did you when did you decide that the Dead was for you, and when did you decide that needed to express the Dead to other people?
The Grateful Dead has been a favorite of mine since late in high school, early in college. Obviously in college.
When are we talking? I'm sorry, not to. I know you're a lovely.
We don't want to dox you, Doctor.
The ladies. But what are we talking?
70s? Early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. But we talk about this Reckoning show. I was telling the Mouse last night. I remember watching that on TV live on Halloween night.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
A friend of mine had I think it was on Showtime. I want to say it was on Showtime. And he had Showtime. Of course, I didn't. And
The
I went
rich
over to his
kids.
house.
The
I
rich
went over
kids.
to his house on freaking Halloween night, and we watched the Grateful Dead, and I'll never forget it. And that was really the one show that just blew me away. You know,
I love the idea of the radio stations too, because maybe we were talking about it last night, but when I was a kid, you know, in high school in the 70s, you know, you had your standard album oriented rock during the day.
Yeah.
And then they would have local, it was all local. We didn't have this national shows like you have now, right? It was all local programming. And you would have like between 11 and 12 or 12 and 1 or 1 and 2, you'd have like, you know, the offbeat hours. And there used to be a Grateful Dead hour down here, like after like 1 a.m. But they also had like New Riders of the Purple Sage. They had like really specific, you weren't getting Led Zeppelin, you know, or if you did, you got like Zeppelin you never heard before, right? So they were playing like really focused musical shows just for an hour long at night that, I mean, when you're a kid, you're not awake at that hour, but if you are, you get something completely different to listen to. So the Grateful Dead like station is like a perfect idea. And it's not on Sirius, because Sirius, you got to pay for a subscription, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, the thing I did when I started this Grateful Dead station, now obviously you guys know there's tons of shows out there. There's tons of, you know, material. So I just started Googling, you know, what's the best version of Althea, you know, and, you know, it'll show up, you know, 5 or 6, you know, oh, this was the greatest version of that. This was the second greatest version. So I go out and get those, and, you know, what's the greatest version of Morning Dew, you know, and I put, you know, probably 3 or 4 versions of each tune on the thing. And I've counted up the other day, I've got, I think 385 unique tracks. Grateful Dead songs. I didn't know there were that many, you know, but obviously with the 2 and 3 different versions of it, you know, stretches to, you know, quite a bit of
sure. And we were talking about that actually last week. The 3 of us were talking about that as well, like certain versions. We're reviewing the Manor Downs, the first set, and Merch was actually saying, you know, how he doesn't really like the slower tempoed versions of some songs that develop later. And sometimes in the earlier, like Cold Wind and Rain was much quicker. They love each other much quicker. It was, you know, the earlier version was much a faster tempo, which were great too. So yeah, you can find dozens of versions of the same song throughout their progression and changes through the years.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the you know, I think it's a 9-part special on Amazon. When they talk about, when the guy talks about, I was at the Lyceum and went out to get something and came and, you know, tried to sneak back and it was locked, and they launched it in the Morning Dew, and it was
sure hope their quarter's working.
Hope it's running.
And that, to me, that is the definitive version of that tune, man.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's
awesome.
actually actually true.
That's what I'll say, Dr. Dead. I mean, what I'll always appreciate is just, you know, I tend to get myself into a little bit of ruts, right? So I'll be like, oh, I love Deal. Like, I just need to hear every version of Deal, or I want to hear Weather Report Suite. Not that that's all that deep. Or I want to hear, you know, whatever, pick your track. But then when I throw on your station, sometimes it'll click, like, just to hear something different that I wouldn't think about putting on, and just kind of making you do it. But it's always great.
I'm always trying to find, you know, the tune that they played one time in concert, you know, or one, you know, alternative demo version of some tune they did in the studio, you know, because they're now releasing, you know, almost everything on the 50th anniversary, whatever.
You got vinyl everywhere, and they're doing all
kinds of outtakes
stuff.
and all kinds of, you know, just little weird stuff that it's just like, oh, you know, and something comes up and you get it and you're like, oh God, I got to get that, you know.
It's the one. That's the one I need.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one I need. And I think actually that the track and the album we're going to break down all this Reckoning stuff tonight kind of leads a little bit into that, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think some of the recording quality on these tracks were fantastic.
Correct.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think, Mark?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was introduced to Reckoning of the same guy that introduced me to the Dead, and had it as a vinyl, again, playing bumper pool downstairs listening to it. And I was like, is this the same guys? Well, because he had played me a Rippin' Ico earlier in the month.
Echo.
And so I love that stuff. I love the intimacy. I love that actually that it makes Jerry play a little bit more carefully and a little bit more delicately, in that he's not just sort of hiding behind some of the note bending and the sort of sliding around for notes and stuff and getting away from kind of behind the noise.
He's real clean. I mean, on this album, I mean, everything he does is super clean, and he's super attentive to it. And it's
quick, and that was who he was, and that was where he cut his teeth, and that was really always what he went back to when he got off the road and was playing with friends and doing stuff. So it was nice to I absolutely love that album. And I'll probably have to put that one in the car now as when I go to work tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was
kick us off on the where are we going? Let's
just one thing about Reckoning. That was the first time I bought the tape for my car, or CD for my car, before I bought the album. I did get the album and I did get the tape, but I got it so it was portable, so I could hear, because I first heard it at a friend's house, and it was like it was one of those, I went over and just picked the needle up and put it back when nobody was watching. I'm like playing it again. It was that good. So I'm like, I for about, I want to imagine a month of me driving to and from work, that was in the player, you know, all the whole time. It was fantastic. I love that Reckoning.
Well, I think that one of the coolest things about it was, what other band could release 2 double live albums in the same year?
Yeah.
And have them sell as well as they did. I mean, Dead Set sold really well too.
So we got Dead Set and Reckoning.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for those that
the same shows.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about, because for those who don't know, without the Dead really knowing it, in the fall of 1980, they didn't realize they were at their 15th anniversary, and some promoter at a show in September touted the upcoming shows as their 15th anniversary shows, and the stories are that the band had no idea, and they just did one of their standard shows, and the people came out, the audience didn't really click, and the band noticed this and said, like, well, I guess they just weren't there tonight. Maybe it was us, maybe it was them, I don't know. And then someone said, well, they're expecting a special show for your anniversary. And of course, typical Dead, what anniversary? You know, so that gave them an idea. They went back home to San Francisco, and they started working on some special shows. And at the same time, Bill Graham was opening up the Warfield Theater, which was his pet project. And it was a true intimate type 2,200 people, I think 2,200 seat theater. Since then, everybody had played it at the time. And I think Dylan had already played in it. I think Springsteen also played it as well. So this is the first time the Dead were playing, and it was Graham's favorite band. So he decked the place out in like a Dead retrospective of 15 years. And the speciality was that they had no idea. The audience had no idea. So there was a curtain, unlike we've all been to Dead shows, right? There's usually the lights are down or low. There's an oriental rug, big oriental rug on the stage. Stage hands are coming out tooling with equipment, and then one by one,
Asian American rug,
and they start tuning, and they get going. This time there was a curtain. The audience could only hear that, and when the curtain came up, they saw there were like 5 stools or chairs, and they set up for an acoustic set. And I was just listening to someone recount it, and they said the audible intake of breath, like it was just totally unexpected. And it started off a series of shows where they opened with an acoustic set and then had 2 electric sets. So these were like all night shows, and it was amazing.
Incredible.
So they hit New York, and they do all of the late night shows. They were doing Tom Snyder. They were doing Good Morning America for interviews. People were seeing the Grateful Dead who hadn't really seen them before. Shows sold out, in a minute, in a Hollywood minute. So it was just geared for success. And what we're going to talk about tonight are some of those shows, which was, I think, a 10-night run. Could be wrong on that.
Yeah,
but
the one thing that I learned last night that I didn't know about, the Radio City Music Hall has become this revered venue, but at that time, the Grateful Dead was only the second rock and roll show that had ever been at Radio City Music Hall.
Is that right?
Correct.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
They had Linda Ronstadt in the fall of '80, and then the Dead took it over, and it was like, what?
Now it's all the Rockettes.
Yeah,
I don't know what you see there other than the Rockettes.
And it was losing money, and you're right. They would thumb their nose at like a rock band or something like that. Plus, they didn't want to attract that type of element, we'll say.
Yeah.
But money talks, right? They're in a desperate situation, and they made a lot of money off of these series of shows because they all sold out, which was fantastic. Because the Radio City Music Hall, I don't know if you guys have ever been there. I've only been there once. It really is an institution. It's a great place. I never saw them. I saw the 20s, actually. You know? I saw the Rockettes there. What kind of I think I saw a Christmas show there. You know, so. Yeah, this was like, the ticket to have. And again, as I mentioned, they're going to be, it was also going to be rebroadcast or simulcast across the US East Coast on, I think, public broadcast channels, select ones, not all of them. I don't remember getting it down here in Florida. I don't know if you guys remember seeing it live when it happened, but they did say that it was a simulcast broadcast across PBS.
And it was on PBS and it was on Showtime as well.
Yeah. So this was the hot ticket. So, and just as a shout out, on October 30th, they're going to rebroadcast the Halloween show, the final show of that run on the Grateful Dead's YouTube channel, which you can find just by typing Grateful Dead YouTube or Grateful Dead channel. It's their official channel. So I guess if you get a Roku stick, you can get it up on TV.
With Senator Al Franken.
With Senator Al Franken, that's right. Yep. Franken and Davis were running the whole thing, and they had a comedy bit before.
Yeah, they get the go to
broadcast. Yes, yeah. So it's great. And so so if you guys want to start breaking down some of the songs they played, I went through these, and what we have on Reckoning is just a part of what they actually played on the acoustic sets. They seem to rotate.
I was surprised. I went through today and took all the set lists and put it in a spreadsheet. I wanted to see.
Oh, Jesus Christ! We got some advanced analytics.
I did the same thing.
So they played 208 songs over the 8 shows. They only played 84 unique tunes. I mean, I'm saying only, but they were repeating songs. I mean, over and over. So it's like we did get a small portion of it on that double album, but since there was only there were the short acoustic set, and then there was a ton of just repeats. I was really surprised to see that, because people were always buying tickets to every show. And you would go to the 3-night run or the 4-night run, wherever it was, and you would never see a repeat. I was pretty surprised to see this.
So what do we hang on, Merch, yeah. hang on. Before we get into this, I gotta say, I've noticed on Twitter, you've got like 50, you're following like 52 people or something.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them.
Oh.
What the fuck is that shit?
That hurts.
Like, I mean, I know you're following Dr.Dead and you're following, of course, Ned Snark, but I mean, what the fuck?
I'll change that before I get out of this seat.
Come on, Merch, get it to 51.
Jesus
But I will tell you, though, I was a little surprised, but not entirely, because I think, like I said, I've told you guys, and in doing this show, I've been doing some more reading and found that sort of Phil kind of agrees with me. The Dead were never the same after 75, 76. And, hang
on. You sound like Mr. Negative Nancy. You sound like me last week. Hang on. Let's slow the fuck down. All right.
The last sort of great and meaningful album in 77 with Terrapin. After that, it was a bunch of stuff that was just kind of kicking the can down the road with Go to Heaven and what was the one with In the Dark?
You're not wrong. I mean, you're not entirely wrong, but at the same time, I feel like an album like Reckoning, where they took all those first set acoustic numbers and they put it together. I mean, I feel like you really had an opportunity to hear Jerry shine where he was really truly passionate and where he was really first engaged. And I feel like you can hear that resonate throughout the band, and you hear, I mean, some great keys, you hear the great drums all on all of it. I mean, I don't know, I think it's great.
What are you playing?
What do we got? You gotta aim it a little
right to the mic. And I'm surprised
you gotta let it fart right into the mic, man.
And I'm surprised too, that because I didn't download them and break them out analytically, but I was just going through this day in Grateful Dead history. You can easily change the date, right? So when I was going through these shows, and I think I did the week of starting like this week, like the 21st or 20th, and I didn't notice many repeats at all, actually. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, wow, they didn't really repeat on the 22nd. The show was completely different on the 23rd. And I was like, interesting. So it's funny that you actually did it more scientifically. So I'll defer to your analysis.
Just
I'm
scientific
looking
analysis.
at this right now. At least just in the acoustic set alone, they did on the road again both of those nights. They did Monkey and the Engineer both of those nights.
Yeah.
But that was it's hard, when you just sort of go from page to page and look at them. But so I did it in the spreadsheet. I was a little disappointed to see it actually.
When I was going through it, when I did the same thing you did, and I was going through it, and downloading each night, and every night I thought I was going to get to the close of the acoustic set and see something other than Ripple, but it never happened. Never happened.
No.
Oh yeah, look at that.
But I'll tell you that those are some of the best versions of Ripple that you'll ever hear.
I mean, love those versions.
That's what I'll tell you is that, all those acoustic, they nailed it, and it felt, I've never heard anything quite where there was such an electric feel to an acoustic set. Like they're playing the electric guitar, but like Jerry's bending the strings and you can feel them. The strings are about to snap. Like you can hear them over the recording. And I mean,
and he's also said too, it's different muscles, and Merch can talk about this because he's the musician, but he said, acoustic sets are much more difficult because it's harder on the hands.
It is definitely harder on the hands and harder on your sort of forearms. But it was also interesting. That they play sitting down. I hate playing sitting down because it puts the guitar in a different position. Yeah. So it makes it more difficult for me to do that too. So yeah, but it is. It's not an entirely different beast, but it's like a cousin of the electric guitar.
He did say, I did listen to an interview over the weekend in the run up to this show, and he did say that they could only do this because they had a new like hybrid folk electric guitar. It's electric, but it's a folk guitar. So but you're still pulling the strings. But I guess it's from the sound.
That's what Jerry was playing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and Bobby
Ned had Jerry had a new guitar.
And hey, let's remember this was before MTV, and this was before all the MTV unplugged sets and stuff. I think they really gave the idea down the line. I mean, for Clapton's unplugged set and Dylan's unplugged set.
MTV unplugged.
Everybody was looking, hey, Grateful Dead can do it. Fucking, we can do it too.
That's a good point.
I always hope for MTV Unplugged because that was my favorite MTV show.
I love those.
And I kept going, come on, bring on the dead, bring on the dead. Just, they never did. Yeah. Nope. That should have been fantastic. But, again, not to do like a quantum week, but this is also a pretty interesting period in time as well because you're at the fall of 1980. And as we talked about before, The River was the big album by Bruce Springsteen that came out in that summer. Also, John Lennon, I forgot, he also released Double Fantasy, his last album. And of course,
that's right.
And of course, in December, he gets killed. So right there on Monday Night Football, I remember I was watching.
Yeah.
And my dad was just getting accepted into his fraternity, and
oh my God, shut up!
That is hilarious.
No, that's a lie. That's a lie. I'm exaggerating.
And hey, let's not forget we were a week away from Ronald Reagan being elected president.
That's true. That's right. That's right.
My dad had graduated college barely, if he ever did. But
yeah, it was a pretty wild. I couldn't have. I was thinking about that too. It's like, God, I wish I could have gone to that show. And I realized, no, fool. You had just started college. I was on the football team, so I was playing football in college too. There's no way I could go. Also, John Bonham died around this time too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because I remember I was
that's an interesting
practice when I was told about that. I was like, what? I freaked out.
So that's an interesting perspective. So I mean, the first actual like rock and roll death that I remember somebody telling me about was Jerry Garcia. But I have at that time in my life, I had zero understanding of what that meant. Like I remember it was the summer. I was on a bus. We were going. I was doing this like after school, or it wasn't after school, but it was like this recreation program. And somebody was like, "Oh, my dad told me Jerry Garcia died," and I was like, "Oh, that sucks." Like whoever Jerry, but for some reason it stuck out to me, right? And I was like, I don't know what year did he die? 95? 95. So I was 12 or 13, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know. It's just It's crazy how those moments, and but still we're all here, and we've had these kind of overlapping experiences, and this has all brought us together sort of across this plane of existence, right? I mean, isn't that the beauty of it? There's so many planes, but they all converge here.
Correct. And again, it's because that's the one thing I like. One thing I really appreciate about even being in part of this podcast that we follow. We belong to this Kirk Minihane show podcast, Dr.Dead. It's a cult, by the way. So
Yeah, we need to ask it. We need to ask Dr. Dead
involved.
about that. We need to.
But
Yeah.
you're kind of accepted. Like it's always about with us. It's the show, or with us here, it's like the Dead. So it's always about the music. So you can be whatever race, religion, political affiliation. If you like the Dead, I love going to Dead shows, and I'm an old man now, but I'm going to like Dark Star Orchestra or Dead and Company shows, and I'm like, they have no idea who I am, but they know that I'm here because I like the music, and you're accepted because of that, and it's a cool feeling. It's a great feeling.
It doesn't surprise me when you said, Dr. Dead, that the Dead show started to get actual listeners, and you've got 10,000 unique listeners, because there seems to be they have an odd way of always generating a group of people at a certain age that is going to fall for them,
Yes.
and then start to carry it on. And it doesn't always happen. Like Led Zeppelin, my son is like, Led who? And he's not a Deadhead, but he knows the Grateful Dead. And he knows the Grateful Dead because people that he hangs out with know them and enjoy them. And nobody his age really at this point listens to the Grateful Dead or the Doors or anything like that. He's like, who the fuck is that? But there's always there's a weird thing about the Grateful Dead fans just always sort of regenerating themselves. And there's a bunch of 15-year-olds that jump on the train and off they go, and they start, and then there's 15 other cover bands that pop up out of each town.
Trying to understand. But to me, I mean, I think it's a lot about like trying to understand. Like, to me, there's a whole other level of, so there's the music and kind of the notes and everything that gets played, but then there's this whole like other level of just being with people and just this fundamental experience that we all go through.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dr. Dead. Dr. Dead.
There's definitely a community feel around it. And the other thing about it is, it's different every night. I mean, every show was different.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, a regular artist will put out an album and they'll go out and support the album, right? And they'll play the songs from the record, and they sound pretty similar to what's on the record. But the Grateful Dead, it's just, support an album. Are you fucking kidding me?
An album.
I mean, it's like Zappa. I went to see Zappa a couple times. And Zappa would never supporting an album was like alien to him. He would always play the next album. I mean,
I just started to get into Zappa.
You know nothing. You've never heard anything.
Right.
Yep. Zappa's a lot of work to get into, but that's actually an interesting subject.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
But when you're there, I mean, especially, so that kind of gets me. I know I'm digressing, but I mean, like, to actually listen to a great recording, like somebody who intentionally understands their audience and the sound that's going to come there. Right. So I feel like Zappa was very hyper super aware of the 2-channel stereo. But I think similarly, the Grateful Dead, especially when you go to 74 and the Wall of Sound, it's kind of about being super hyper aware of the experience of the people that are there and connecting with them at the most emotional level. Right.
I think there was an interesting segment in that Amazon thing. And they were talking about the Wall of Sound, and Phil was talking about, the height of a bass wave was exactly the height of the. And I mean, it was real. I mean, it was very intense physics, and
that was Bear.
Yeah,
it was just like, Bear.
He's the one who conceived it.
It was a genius.
Oh my God!
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I read his. In fact, I gave his biography to one of my good friends who's a Navy Deadhead. But I just read a biography on him, and he was one of these guys that everything he touched, he did an unbelievable focus, and he perfected it. Whether it was making LSD or his audio sounds, because he had a hearing disorder that allowed him to hear things at like a higher pitch or something. So he was like, before he was even into music, he's like, that doesn't sound right. And he'd be able to fix people's like hi-fis back in the day in the 60s before he was even aware of what he was doing. And he just drilled right down and found out that he could make a fantastic sound with enough money, because that wall of sound was to have been expensive.
Oh
as
God!
Wasn't cheap.
Try moving
Yeah.
that on a 50-date tour. You know.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that it's like one of these stations like the AXS, they do these rock legends or whatever. And I watched Leonard Skinner and Ronnie Van Zant, who I actually saw in concert. He wanted the band to play exactly how it sounded on the album, because his thing was that's what the fans are here to.
That's what they want.
That's what they want. And I'm like, now back then I used to love Leonard Skinner. It never dawned on me. And then when you hear the Dead, it's like, you'll be at a show, and it could be the early 80s or the late 80s or early 90s, and you're like, okay, you're waiting for the strings that you recognize. And then sometimes you don't recognize it until it gets pretty deep in the song. Then of course I know this song. So I like that challenge of, what are they getting into? What is this? Huh? What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They'll go into this into this spacey thing, and you hear one little note, and you're like, oh, I know what's
got it
now. And it's sure enough, playing in the band coming up.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Dead. So we invited you to come on this podcast. You know anything about the Kirk Minihane show? You ever heard about him? You do any research?
I heard about it. I watched the show that you sent. It's good stuff. I mean, it's well.
He's licorice.
They talk about licorice, exactly. Yeah, I saw you said that quote last night, and I started looking up Jerry Garcia quotes, and I actually posted one last night that, talking about America being xenophobic and racist, but that's what America is,
That's
and
it.
I said, talk about somebody who was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
That's what I think super interesting, right? And I think we all feel this, right? There's sort of this weird connection where Deadheads and kind of everybody who's in that community kind of lived on this different sort of wavelength to a certain degree. I mean, I'm going to call it a wavelength generously, and then you get kind of this Kirk Minihane thing, and we're all here because we kind of bonded on this common bond where it's like, hey, this Kirk Minihane thing, it's a bunch of people who think about things differently, and this Deadhead thing, it's just people who think about things differently and they appreciate things differently. So that's kind of why I guess we're all here. So I guess.
Well, what we found was that the two groups, like they're fanatical, right? And of course the Minihane show people we're a smaller group because we're not nationwide yet, but very dedicated. It's all about Kirk and the show, the Dead. It's all about the music. Anything else is peripheral, right? And the three of us were just talking at a gathering in Saco, Maine in what was that, in August? And we just said, like, there's a lot of similarities between Minifans and Deadheads. And 3 or 4 people, including these guys, were like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, there are. And it was, so we said, like, we should do a YouTube show about it. And that's how this whole thing came together. So except for this show, because you're a special guest, but we usually try to dip in something from the show and relate it to something from the Grateful Dead. Because Kirk Minihane loves Springsteen, and we're all kind of like, we like Springsteen.
Oh yeah.
But I'm convinced. I'm convinced
that's
if Kirk listened to the Dead, he'd have a better emotional state.
He just would need to listen to him right. He needs to.
Yeah.
He needs to listen to Reckoning. If he were to listen to Reckoning, I mean that would be.
He also needs to watch a couple of interviews with Jerry, because Jerry was a prankster. He was always just wanted to have a good time, but you can tell
when libertarian too, right?
Oh yeah, when somebody sits down with Jerry, you can just see the energy that's just radiating from him, and he's such an amazing character. I mean, I love watching interviews with Jerry because he's so fascinating.
Yeah, well, also when the crowds got a little difficult in the mid and late 80s, and they asked, I forgot where it was. It was on the Long Street Strip. And he asked, Jerry, could you please make a statement or put together, write a letter or read something on public radio? Hey, calm down. And he's like, no, I'm not a cop.
not my job.
No, I'm gonna go tour by myself. See y'all.
Yeah, nope, he's not. Phil did it.
Hey Merle, what are you doing?
Yeah, Merle. Exactly.
So I listened to these shows a little bit, and the one thing that actually struck me is I did love the fact that they surprised everybody by doing this acoustic thing. It was such a fantastic idea and change. But as I actually listened to a couple of them, and what I found was it's almost like the second set was a combo. Like they went electric, but they still played some of those songs that could have been acoustic songs. Like they did, Friend of the Devil, Me and My Uncle, Peggy O, Big River. It was almost like they were sort of segueing from one type of instrument, give them a little halfway, and then they went full on electric.
You're right.
Yeah.
So I had fun with it because I think that when you pick up your acoustic guitar and you play those songs you've always played electric, it gives you a much different outlook on it. It gives you have to play it differently, and so then going back to the electric gives you some sort of different ideas. And I thought it made Jerry play pretty fresh. And it was just at this point, I've said it before, that we're in the hit or miss stage of their career. And
I wouldn't want to put myself in Jerry's shoes by any means, but I feel a little bit like, especially some of the acoustic stuff, they let him sort of, or he maybe felt more free to express his persona on his natural habitat, if you would. Like,
I mean,
I felt a lot of like bluegrass kind of roots, sort of acoustic stuff, which would open up then sort of your other level for the second set, right?
And they would cover a lot of stuff that he would later do in Jerry Garcia acoustic band too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
By the way, another great album.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it was Jerry going back to his roots.
That's right.
The only thing he didn't do was pull out a banjo,
Right.
But he was he was trying to. I mean, it sounded like he pretty much was. I mean, he was twisting those strings and he was playing it quick. And I mean, it sounded about like banjo music.
And I think Jerry was in pretty good health at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I would tend to agree with you. Yeah.
And
I have a question for the four of you. When you've seen the Dead or Dead and Company, Sherm, what the venue at Warfield? I know.
I mean, you could at least say the Dead or the other ones. I mean, I've seen more than the Dead and Company. Jesus Christ.
Warfield, I think had 2,200 people. And while you guys were just talking, I looked up Radio City Music Hall today. I'm not sure what it was then, but it's like 6,000 people. I would have even though you said like the shows were, repetitive, I would have loved to have seen them in a small.
Oh my God. Yeah. I wouldn't have.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
The whole
Maybe
band.
not all 8 nights, for sure.
What's the smallest venue you saw them in, Merch? Because I think you've seen more shows than me. Actually.
I've never seen them any place small. Regular. Probably Providence Civic Center, maybe 13,000.
Okay.
Well, then fuck
place.
you all. I've seen Bobby, and Bobby that was a Rat Dog with probably 1,000 people, maybe not even, maybe 500 people. Small little crowd. Needed Tideway in Tempe, Arizona.
I saw Rat Dog, and Merch probably knows the place, the State Theater in Portland, Maine.
Yeah, of course.
It holds about less than 2,000 people. We sat at like almost like a booth and dining table. It was great. It was a fantastic place and still there.
Yeah,
but I saw the Dead. I want to say I saw him like in Lakeland. The Lakeland Civic Center was not that big, but I think it was maybe 12,000. Yeah, like 13, 12.
I saw him at the Fox in Atlanta, and I don't think the Fox is that big.
Ooh, you were at the Fox shows?
3,500, 3,800, something like that.
Those were some good shows.
What years?
Yeah,
Which
it's probably, probably November of '80.
Oof.
I think.
Oh wow! Yeah. I'm up in Atlanta all the time, and I'm always in that neighborhood.
Good shows.
Yeah, beautiful theater, man. I love that theater.
There we go. Sorry.
Out of here?
I'm always in that neighborhood when I'm in Atlanta.
Yeah.
For dinner. Yeah. A great venue. So
the Fox.
Yeah, the Fabulous Fox. That's also where, speaking of Leonard Skinner, where their big double album, One More from the Road.
Yeah, I saw some good shows at the Fox. I mean,
yeah. Good bars in that neighborhood too, by the way.
Yeah.
So and we don't want to go on too long, but we want to first of all thank you very much, Dr.Dead.
100%.
And it was so
it.
much fun. Can we have you on again? Because we could bring you on too.
Sure. Yeah,
what we try to do.
I'd like to put a little plug in for the other stations.
Absolutely.
Plug away.
I was going to say earlier when I checked the statistics, the 10,000 listeners a month for the Dead station, I'd say probably 90% U.S. listeners. Okay. So, but when I check the statistics for the classic rock station, it's mostly Europe and Eastern European. You know, a lot of German listeners, a lot of UK listeners. Not so many U.S. listeners. I'm not trying to miss the U.S. listeners.
When I've traveled, it's been weird. The places in Europe are weird. They love that 80s or the 70s classic American rock.
And I mean, you know, at this station, to me, music is music, you know, and people that are like, oh, I'll only listen to music from 1985 to 1987. I'm like, you're an idiot, you know. I mean, I cover stuff from Elvis to, you know, if something comes out tomorrow, I'll play it, you know.
Nice. So on your classic rock station, though, give us an idea of like what songs you normally are playing on that.
Okay, I'm gonna get in trouble by saying this, but hopefully the people that don't need to hear this aren't listening. But you were talking about earlier, you know, some of the rock stations that do special shows and stuff. I grew up with listening to a radio show on Sunday nights called the Mad Music Asylum in a little station in Augusta, Georgia. Okay. And it was free form. They played anything. Okay. And I always loved it. Okay. So when I got ready to start the station, I'm like, you know, let me check the Mad Music. It's defunct. It hadn't been there for, you know, many years. I said, you know what? I love the name. I'm going to use it. The Mad Music Asylum. So, they say, great artists borrow and good artists borrow and great artists steal outright. You know, so.
Who would you say? Do you have a favorite artist today? I mean, who would you say
today?
Current artist.
Oh, geez.
Oh, you know, Rob. You know who I listened to?
That's tough.
Hey, I listened to the Suitcase Junket.
Oh yeah.
A bunch today. That guy is awesome.
He is awesome.
Sturgill Simpson. You heard of Sturgill Simpson?
Yeah. I like Sturgill.
Yeah,
I like a lot of that, you know, kind of.
He just dropped. If you're a Sturgill Simpson guy, merch. Ned, you ever heard of Sturgill Simpson? You know, so he's kind of an old school kind of classic. Listen to him, please. He's probably my favorite current artist for sure. Yeah. But he just dropped unexpectedly this past week. He redid a whole bunch of his stuff in a bluegrass fashion. And he called it. He just dropped unexpectedly an album called Cutting Grass, and it's just like him redoing his shit in bluegrass style. But yeah, check out Sturgill Simpson.
I will absolutely look that up.
Fucking trippy. He does trippy as shit. I mean, but at the same time, he's like Americana as shit. I mean, he's classic country.
So,
I mean,
do you guys know? I've actually seen him in concert. He was a bit disappointing, and I saw him a small venue here like last year. Keller Williams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know Keller.
Okay,
I know Keller Williams.
Is it something like that? Because that sounds like what he does.
No. Sturgill Simpson's more like a whole.
What would you call it? Like alt country?
No, Sturgill Simpson is like there's nothing. I mean, I would say current music. Sturgill Simpson is pushing the limits of. He's bringing things together and pushing limit. Like I can't really kind of like the Dead. He's the closest thing. I would say it's him and Chris Robinson Brotherhood. There would be the two bands that I would say that are current and taking sort of these classic themes, but then pushing them out.
Sturgill Simpson, a lot of people classify him as country, you know, and but to me, country is not. It's not country. Sturgill Simpson is country in the true tradition of country, like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson.
He skips about 20 years of country, and then he applies psychedelic, exactly. So he takes like 19, maybe late. He picks up country music where it left off, and let's call it 1970. I don't know, Dr.Dead, what year? I mean, it's probably Johnny Cash and.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe 1970. You know? Kind of early Highwaymen. He picks it up where they left off, skips all the other shit, and then applies kind of some crazy fucking rock and roll shit to the end of it. It's pretty fucking rad. I mean, it's
yeah, you know, if you're gonna go down that rabbit hole, I'd go. You know, some Shooter Jennings and some Lucas Nelson and Promise of the Real. You know, that's where it's at today. I mean, it really is. You know,
Yeah, those are the guys that are pushing the limits, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for
those are the
sure.
guys that are actually experimenting and playing instruments and actually fucking.
Well, it's
Yeah.
Chris Stapleton in that regard, you know, because that's his guitar playing is fantastic. But I wanted to ask, on your classic rock station, what are you covering? What are you playing?
Oh man, name it.
All right, here we go.
I'll tell you some of my favorite artists.
Go.
And these may be artists that not a lot of people are familiar with a lot of their music. Warren Zevon.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
A lady named Joan Armatrading. I don't know if you know Joan.
Oh, that's
I don't know Joan Armatrading.
Oh man, she's fucking
You already
great.
brought up Frank Zappa. I mean, you're the first guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
Zappa. I don't
there's
play a
not
lot
many
of
people that bring
Zappa.
up Frank Zappa.
I don't play a lot of Zappa, but you know. But another, you know, other cool things. A guy named John Martin. He was like an Irish, you know, folk singer songwriter. Eric Clapton covered a couple of his tunes. And I just go, you know, just good music.
So here's my suggestion. I wish I could do what you're doing, because when I drop names like the band Spirit,
yeah,
you know, Merch might know who it is. Sherman has no idea who that is, you know.
Never heard.
Or
Wishbone Ash.
Wishbone Ash. There you go. Serious. You do get to hear them, but you never hear like Spirit. You never hear Jeff Beck Group, even with Rod Stewart on vocals. I think
I've heard of Jeff Beck Group.
The greatest album of all time. The great.
Beck Ola, man, great album. Truth, great album. Yeah.
Truth is the greatest single album I've ever heard in my life.
Sure.
And it was recorded at the same time as
I've never even heard of this. I mean, I've literally never heard of this.
Man, you need to listen to the classic rock station a little bit.
That's right.
Jeff,
you have such a good Dead station. If your Dead station wasn't so good, maybe I would.
When I started this station, I had this guy in Florida. He was I think he was a PE teacher or something at a high school, and he latched onto it, and he played it in his classes every day.
Oh wow!
And he was like, "This is really an education for these kids, because they've never heard any of this music before."
Correct. Well, even adult Delaney and Bonnie.
Delaney and Bonnie, yeah.
Oh my God! At one time, Delaney and Bonnie consisted of Eric Clapton and George Harrison.
Yeah, great.
I've never even heard of Delaney and Bonnie.
And Dwayne Allman, you know.
And Dwayne Allman also did. Yep, Come in My Kitchen. Little Feet, of course, but I think everyone loves Little Feet. But if you listen to Warren, if you listen to my mind just went blank. Who's the singer? Who's the one who started it? Shit.
Lowell George.
Lowell George, thank you. You listen to Lowell George, Little Feet. It's
you know where he came from, right?
Well, he produced Shakedown Street by the Dead.
Yeah, that's right. But you know where he came from?
Linda Ronstadt. No, Frank Zappa.
Frank Zappa.
That's right. Frank Zappa.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. He wrote Willin', and Frank Zappa said, "You should record that yourself." Not me.
Yeah. Frank Zappa was like, "You're too commercial for me, dude. Get the hell out."
But the kids today, I hate to say it, the kids today, they don't understand good rock and roll.
Well,
didn't get played. It didn't get played on the radio.
I've had this conversation with my wife many times, and she's like, you know, we grew up in the greatest period of music in history. You know, from 1965 to, you know, probably 2000.
Yeah.
And there was more great music released than
it did transcend.
Ever.
Yep. I like Canned Heat.
I love Canned
Tuna.
Heat. Canned Heat. There's a lot of Canned Heat on the Blues Station for sure.
Yes, good, excellent. Another one, very underappreciated. Now they're commercials. You hear them in commercials, right? You guys probably heard.
Yeah.
Let's Get Together and Going Up the Country. Yeah. But then like Hot Tuna, like no one's heard of Hot Tuna.
Hot Tuna, yeah.
Hot Tuna's a fantastic band.
All right, boys.
But
how do we find you, Dr.Dead?
Give it to us.
Okay, the classic rock station is WMMA.rocks. The Mad Music Sound, WMMA.rocks. The blues station is WBLU.rocks. The jazz station is WJZZ.rocks.
Nice.
And the Grateful Dead station is WGDR.rocks.
Yes, sir.
Now you can find all four stations. There's one website that's got all four stations. You can bounce back and forth between them. It's madmusicradio.com.
Nice. Yep, I've been there. I was there today.
Yeah, music radio.
There's a
That's
Twitter
what I wrote it down
handle.
too.
There's a Twitter handle for each one, and you know we got it going on. You know?
We'll tweet you out. We'll all tweet you out, all three of us.
We absolutely will. We'll let you
really
know too.
appreciate you taking some time out.
Oh my
God,
God.
do it.
For
It was
sure.
fun. It was
For
fun.
sure. And please come back.
Didn't
Do it
get to
again.
watch the debate, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I think this is probably better.
Just hit Twitter.
I voted today, so it's okay.
Yeah.
How long is it on? 90 minutes?
Huh?
Yeah.
The line.
Hour and a half. Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going
11.
tomorrow morning. My wife waited an hour, and I'm going tomorrow morning at 7. So she went from 6 to 7. I'm going to go from 7 to 8 when it opens.
Yeah, I
The
was there
beauty of
from
small town New Hampshire.
11,
Yeah.
11:20 to about 1 o'clock. Yeah.
There's only 5,000 of us. We get a whole gym to walk into. Yeah.
Oh wow. Jeez. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen.
Justin,
Appreciate
we're
it.
out.
Gang.
you.
Anytime, just let me know.
You bet.